take their seats. There is a lot on the agenda. I know we don't typically do the pledge for this meeting, but I would ask everybody to stand prior to this and hold a moment of silence for Bishop Johnson that recently passed away. First African American to hold the JDC director title and integrated that department, a long-term county employee, and had a life well lived and helped many people. So, as a county employee, please stand in remembrance of him. That will move us to, since today is a joint finance and exec committee, that leads us to both the finance and executive committee meetings. I will take those as one motions unless they are wanted to be separated. Member Rosenbaum, Member Williams. Any comments, corrections? Seeing none, please vote. Megan, is that all right that I did that, or did you need them too? Okay. All ayes, the ayes have it. So for informational items 3.1 to 3.7, I will move to, or have those received and filed unless there's any questions on those. Seeing none, we have a presentation from Tyler Cashiering Feasibility Project Update.
Megan, would you switch screens, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today we're bringing forth some information that was requested by members of both the Operations and the Finance Committee earlier in 2025 to take a look at the departments that bring in money within the organization and what that looks like on those processes. So we reached out to Barry Dunn. If you recognize that name, we contracted with Barry Dunn back in 2020 when we went out for bid for our new finance system, and they helped us through the RFP process on that, and then we contracted with them to also help them with the installation of that system. So they've spent a lot of time within our organization. They know our organization very well. They have a great working relationship with I think a number of departments and our finance department, and we still use them today for some consulting and assistance. So when this came about, that request, we reached out to them to perform Basically, in your packet, you'll find the details of their feasibility study to look at what we would call a standard cashiering system across the county. So we invited Jonathan Grace. Jonathan is the principal of their local government practice group to Peoria. He is from Maine, Portland, Maine. So he came in from Portland, Maine to present this. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him, and he'll go through the study, what they did, and what their findings were, and what the closeout is of this part of the project before we would actually move on to picking a vendor and moving forward. So, Jonathan.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Mark said, John Grace with Barry Dunn. We are here to give an update on the Tyler Cashiering feasibility study. So just for the agenda that we've put together, I'll do some additional introductions, brief overview of the firm, and really spend most of the time, talking about the project itself with the background of the project, what we found through what we call our current state findings. We actually went through a request for information, our RFI process, and we'll discuss those results. And then next steps, but obviously make sure that we have time for some questions and discussion as well. So as Mark mentioned, my name is John Grace, principal within our local government practice group. Been with the firm for 13 years, and prior to joining Barry Dunn, spent 12 years working with various ERP systems. So all my time in some form or fashion has been working with public sector organizations and ERP systems. A little bit about the firm. We were actually founded in 1974, still based out of Portland, Maine today, but we have 10 offices across the country, close to 1,000 employees, and you'll kind of see in the top the different what we call practices. All of these practices work within public sector organizations, and while we do have folks like myself that have prior vendor experience, we are not tied to any vendor. We do not have any partnerships with any vendor, so everything that we provide will be and is always in the best interest of our clients and the county. So a little bit of the background, we had multiple phases for this project. The first phase started with some initial project planning with the project team on our side and the project team on the county side. That really kind of involved identifying who were going to be the departments that we were going to be meeting with, when we were going to be meeting with them, and then on an ongoing basis, having what we call bi-weekly status updates with the project team. That really led us into phase one, which is when we did our current environment assessment. So we actually had folks come here on site, meet with multiple different departments, and really talked through a number of different things. What were they currently doing today? What systems were they using to do any sort of cashiering, cash collection, whether that is in a system or paper form, went through that, documented the results of those, and ultimately identified, what was working well, what isn't, and what the future could look like. From there, once we kind of go from phase one, we're actually in phase two now, where we're wrapping up our system planning memo, which is really kind of the culmination of all the work that we've done, and we're really in order to provide some of those recommendations for the county going forward. So when we looked at our current state findings, again, just to kind of set the stage a little bit, the intent of that was to understand those current systems and processes of the county and those departments who process payments. Again, identify the challenges faced working with those current systems and identify those opportunities for improvement in the future. Now, this is probably pretty hard to read. There's a lot of information here. This is the summary of our current state findings. What I'd like to do is actually have a few slides after this that goes into a little bit more detail, but I always like to kind of start with the summary and then go into the detail from here. So what we found from our current state findings, we actually visited 9 different locations, identified a number of different systems or methods. So when we say methods, this could be processes that are being performed outside of the system, could be using paper, could be Excel, various things, right, that could be identified. Through those 9 locations that we met with and visited, we identified, again, 19 systems or methods used to collect or record payments. Through that, identified multiple Tyler products that the county is currently using, and then from an offline perspective, instances of MS Excel, and then handwritten receipts in some instances. Again, not across the board, but in some instances, this is some of the information that we found. Interface to the ERP system. There's limited, and in some instances, maybe no online payments available in some of these systems. And then there could be instances where the treasurer's assistance is needed for any errors post-batch, right? So again, you're going through, you're doing a batch process, may find that there are errors that may need to be adjusted by the treasurer. And then kind of to summarize that, duplicate entry in multiple systems may not have tap-to-pay functionality, some instances of balancing issues and delays, again, because of the multiple systems, and then the latency between payment and recording into the system, as well as manual tracking in Excel. So again, number of challenges that were identified through this process. When we look at some opportunities for improvement in that in the future environment, really looking to either eliminate or reduce some of those manual imports via integration between some of these systems, allowing some debit credit card payments, providing an online portal, really reducing some of that double entry into multiple systems, right? Because if there's a interface and integration that these systems could talk to one another, we want to have that capability. And then just looking at some of the other areas, that were noted is expanding defendant access payments in that system, allowing recurring payments in Odyssey, document sharing between locations using Tyler Content Manager. So that is the content management functionality that is within Tyler. And then, where applicable, processing some refunds through the credit card services provided. The one thing that we probably didn't identify here, but, it's pretty common too with all of these systems where there could be the potential for multiple credit card service providers too. So through this, we really wanted to kind of go through and see what was and what is available in the market. So we went through our request for information or RFI process. So it's not a formal request for proposal. Vendors do not have to respond, but it's a good way to at least, again, go out into the market, see what's available. It's a fairly light lift for vendors to respond to these RFIs, and we do that by design, right? So we can get some of those responses. And we looked at a number of different areas. The first was looking at the availability of modules. So really identifying what were the desired accounting modules and the vendor's ability to provide some of those modules. We also looked at available functionality, so listed some of that desired functionality that the county needs and looking for the vendors to provide that functionality. We also asked vendors overall, what is the implementation timeline, right? So based on what they could bring to the county, what does that timeline look like? And then we also included just some informational questions, right, where it may not be a yes/no response. It's, how can you handle this? How do you integrate interface with this? And so quite a bit of information that we were able to gather from the vendors there. And then lastly, looked at high-low estimates of costs, right? So this mentions SaaS costs, but we also asked vendors to identify, what was the implementation cost? What's the training cost? Are there any licensing fees? So we really tried to, again, try to identify multiple different areas. And the results of those RFIs, so these were the vendors that responded. At the very bottom is Tyler Technology, so that's the vendor that the county is currently using today for an ERP system. And we asked them to respond based on the Tyler cashiering system. The one above is Can-Am Technologies, so the system that they have is called Teller. And that's all they do is cashiering system, so it's a standalone cashiering system. And the one above, Allpaid, is a third vendor where it wasn't really much level of fit between for that one. So we're really focused in on the two vendors below, Can-Am and Tyler Technologies. And the good thing about this is that, it really gives the opportunity to look at a standalone cashiering system in Can-Am compared to, the functionality that Tyler can provide in their Tyler cashiering system. From a level of fit for the modules, Can-Am provided most of the modules. The one area that they did not provide is any hardware, right? So the cash floors, the cash stations, they integrate with some of those vendors, but they do not provide it. From a level of fit, from a functionality, pretty high level of fit across the board. Through this, right, they were looking at multiple modules, and so when you look at their implementation timeline, it is a little bit longer, from a 10-month to 14-month. But when you look at the costs, we like to break this down from a one-time cost perspective and then the annual cost perspective. In the one-time, just over $435,000, and then an annual cost of just under $114,000. And then I did note there that they did indicate, which is pretty common, where for those annual SaaS fees, there is a 4% annual increase in those fees. And so I wanted to note that. Looking down at Tyler, they can provide all of the modules that were requested, provide a very high level of fit. The one area where they may have been a little low is, we had some requirements in there for the sheriff's department and the treasurer's office. A little bit lower level of fit there, but for their implementation timeline, really looking at, because it's just one module, right? It's going to be a lower implementation timeline. One-time cost just over 203,000. Annual cost just under 75,000. And again, when they look at that annual increase, tends to be around a 5% increase. So between the two, Tyler is about half of the cost of K&M. For me, I'm not surprised by these figures. K&M is one of those systems where it is kind of a standalone best-of-breed application where the Tyler cashiering is really meant specifically for Tyler and its products. Now, obviously, it does have the ability to integrate with other systems. Yes, sir. Yeah, what we're finding with RFI responses is they are becoming less and less. And so in some instances, we may only get, depending on the system that we're looking at, we may only get, 5 to 10 responses. Maybe again, because it's informational and they don't have to respond. I am surprised too that most or more don't respond because it is give you the opportunity to kind of get in front of, a prospective client. What we are finding though is when an RFP is released, there are more responses to those than we've seen in the past. Usually it's the reverse, right? Usually you see more RFIs than RFPs. We're actually seeing a reverse now where more are responding to the RFPs. I think the only other one that I probably would have expected is a company called Core Technologies, where they do, again, very similar to K&M, where they do they do cashiering systems. But when you look at just kind of standalone, best of breed cashiering systems, there aren't many, that we've seen in the public sector marketplace. Great question. And so when we look at some of the next steps, again, we've gone through, we assessed the RFI responses. We're in the process of developing that system planning memo, looking to kind of wrap up the project in November. So when we look at that system planning memo, we'll identify, what are the options available to the county to move forward, the benefits and risks of those options, but I would say, the two options, right, that kind of come to mind are, moving forward with Tyler cashiering, or going out to bid for a full, standalone cashiering system. We probably have to talk through, with procurement in both of those scenarios, what that process would look like, but those are really kind of the two, scenarios that I kind of see unfolding going forward. So project's not completely done yet, but we are getting close to the end.
So you said we're currently using multiple credit card. So we're getting charged for that.
There
Correct?
could be the potential of multiple credit card providers.
Do we have an overall cost of how much that is? I guess what I'm saying is, so we're paying a percentage of whatever. Say somebody puts $100 on a credit card, we're paying part of that to the credit card company, correct? Do we have any idea how much that overall cost is for the county?
I don't know that right now.
I believe historically a lot of that was those decisions were made by those elected departments or through the treasurer's office. From an IT perspective, we never got into that part of that. That was always when Nicole was here. I went through Nicole's office to handle a lot of that, but there's a lot of separate ones. Now I know a lot of our Tyler products have standardized. They got into that, so we've been going through a standardization. But yeah, it's all over the place. It's department by department. A lot of them are right. one more item on this. When we put this project together back in 2021, cashiering was something we looked at, and we had quoted the Tyler cashiering product. But there was I don't know if you remember, there was an executive committee put together that was led by Scott, and on that was the chief financial officer at that time, the chief deputy from the county sheriff, county treasurer, and myself. And Barry Dunn actually put us in contact with several counties who had put in the Tyler Munis project and either done cashiering with it or after it. And we were told, don't do it with it. That's way too much to overhaul at one time. Get your ERP in, get settled for a year and a half or two, and then come back. So that's what we're doing. So the money is still there in the ERP fund. It's $340,000 sitting there that was set aside, that was originally approved of almost $2 million for that project. So the money's there. And so I think this is good timing on where we're at. It's just, following this, we got to determine which way we want to go. And most likely, we'll engage them to come in and help us write that RFP since they have the expertise. But just a little information on that front.
Member Rick.
I guess wasn't directly talked about, but security, fraud protection process. Did you look at that as an opportunity? Not that I'm saying we have fraud, it's just in the future, having a secure system so we're not like one of our counties up north had an issue years ago with a horse farmer stealing money. I'm just trying to make sure that even small change cashiering is managed.
Yeah, I think I'd have to go back and look at some of the questions that we asked, but I'm fairly certain that we did ask some security-related questions, some PCI compliance questions. And again, just to kind of get an idea of where their functionality is at. If there is a decision to go out to RFP, those tend to be more detailed requirements where we get into that level of detail so that we would uncover that during that RFP process.
Other questions? I guess I have Jonathan, maybe this or Mark. So you talked about the RFI to the RFP stage. So what are we expecting out of the RFP? Would Tyler actually lower the rate that's quoted? Or if you're happy with where we're at and the pricing, wouldn't we just engage with Tyler to move this forward instead of putting it out there? What's the benefit at Tyler at this point if they know the price? It's kind of like when you bid something, the price is out there. Are we expecting it to come in lower, or it is what it is?
We actually went back, and Jonathan, we were just talking before this, because they bid on cashiering as part of the original bid in 2021. So it's been a few years. That cost has went up since then, but also we were bundling $1 million plus $1.5 million worth of software in that. So that has went up. There's advantages and disadvantages, to find somebody who specializes in cashiering and that's their focus, I think would be, a positive to look at. The easy thing with Tyler is that becomes an amendment to the current contract we have, and it's an easier process to go through. And plus, we have a lot of Tyler products in-house, and a lot of those work intertwined a little better. I'll let Jonathan, since he deals with them on a daily basis.
I think there's definitely multiple ways, whether it is an amendment, an RFP, cooperative vehicles, any of those instances, we can still have, Tyler or any vendor kind of respond to requirements, just to see how vendors would, respond and compete with one another. So there's multiple options there. But, if the decision is made to go with Tyler, it would be, through some sort of amendment through the existing contract. But again, there are cooperative vehicles out there. I think looking forward, right, we'll kind of work through those decisions with the county team. If it does go out to full RFP, with the chance that the costs go up, you're probably right to go through that process.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for the presentation.
Once we get the final documents back, we'll get those distributed to everybody when we close that out. We're just working on the final details with them on the finalization of all that. So we'll distribute that back. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mark. Safe travels, Jonathan. Next, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Strategic Plan Update. Andre?
Hello, members of the Executive Committee of the County Board. Thank you for having me today. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to provide an update regarding our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Plan, which is goal number 9 under the overall strategic plan of the County Board under the priority of workforce and organizational development. So to just provide an overview, our department was created in fall of 2022 when I arrived, and then Ms. Brittany Graves arrived in spring of 23 as our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Human Resource Generalist to form our department. We presented to you all in May of 23 our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Work Plan, which is attachment 1 in your packet there. Our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Work Plan is based off of 4 pillars: talent attraction and retention, professional training and development, minority and women-owned business procurement, and external stakeholder engagement. So I'm going to go through each pillar at a high level. I did provide a lot of documentation in your packet today just to talk about some of the initiatives and action steps that we have taken as we've been looking to execute our plan over the last couple of years. So beginning with talent attraction and retention, we begin with our workforce demographics report. This is something that we do in collaboration with our Human Resources Department. We report this out to the County Operations Committee. And essentially what we do is we track what is the internal workforce of Peoria County government compared to the most recent census data. Our overarching goal is to be a workforce that reflects the community that we serve. And so we track that data, and that creates a baseline for us. This past spring, we provided a year-over-year report to you all, and we will continue to do that. I believe the cadence has changed on that report to the County Operations Committee, but that report is in your packet, and that's what we utilize for our tracking to see how we're doing in that space. Some recruitment and retention efforts that are being led and championed by Ms. Graves includes her presence at recruitment and job fairs that can be at college campuses, that can be at different community events, anywhere where we can promote career opportunities for Peoria County government. She has also collaborated with our communications department to help out with promotional campaigns to elevate our presence for those opportunities. And she has also sat on interview panels to help fill several key positions, including the communications coordinator, the human resources coordinator, and then most recently, the SRC generalist coordinator position within sustainability. Ms. Graves also has assumed responsibility for our equal employment opportunity tracking and reporting. When it comes to employee engagement, our department is a resource for our internal workforce. And over the last, since our time being here, we have fielded 5 employee related grievances, and we do our best to meet with them and to support them through those intentional and professional aspects to ensure that they feel seen, heard, and that we collaborate with the responsible parties to ensure that there are a good remediation there. This past year, we also supported the Juvenile Detention Center with a recruitment and retention pilot for them. Our department participated in the Illinois City County Manager Association's Learning Operational Real Equity program, where we were tasked with coming up with a pilot. And meeting with the Juvenile Detention Center, we know that they've had some turnover there, a lot of things. It just comes with the nature of the job. It brings a lot of different aspects to it. It takes a special individual to work in that space. But meeting with their leadership, and we were able to conduct a roundtable with their leadership as well as some employees there, we were able to recommend some key themes to them to help with their recruitment and retention efforts. Some of those included creating more transparency when it came to their job description. They ultimately decided to change their job title, so now they are called Youth Detention Specialists, which is a little bit more aligned with what the job is. They do also provide a job shadowing opportunity to those who are interested into the role, so that way they have a better idea of what they're getting themselves into. And then also to promote more wellness resources. A lot of the employees talked about how they felt the stress of the job and not knowing about some of the resources that are available to them as an employee of Peoria County. The interesting thing about the pilot program, meeting with those individuals, is no one complained about pay. And so that was a good metric that we were able to give to the leadership team of sometimes you can't compete in the compensation Olympics, but sometimes you can do some other things to improve the culture. Under that particular pillar, based off of our strategic plan that is still in progress, is the development of our diversity recruitment plan. Going into pillar 2, training and development. And so we have created a catalog of training opportunities that any of our internal workforce departments can reach out to us. We've provided training and development to the Juvenile Detention Center, the Health Department, as well as Probation and Court Services. But then also we've been a resource externally to the Village of Bartonville, the former Quest Academy School, Illini Bluff School District, and the Pekin Chamber of Commerce Leadership School. Most recently, we solicited a speaker from Chicago who just did a cultural competency training entitled Boomers to Zoomers, which talked about multi-generational workers in the workplace for our health department. And that happened last Tuesday, At each of our training opportunities, we do provide a survey so that way we can get feedback on those sessions so we can continue to learn and grow and provide meaningful support to our employees and those who seek us out. Also, another action item, we do participate in the annual all-employee survey. So we do provide about a half a dozen questions that are related to diversity, equity, and inclusion to gather how our employees are currently feeling about the work that we're doing. And that there is a recap of that in your packet. Some themes that came out of the most recent one, though, were concerns about promotion, pay equity, consistency in diversity, equity, and inclusion practices across departments. And then also, too, there was some concerns about our visa process as well, too, that came up that we'll look to address moving forward. But a good data point, though, was 82% of those respondents that took that survey believes that the County of Peoria values diversity, equity, and inclusion, which we thought was a good stat there. And again, there's more intentional data in your packet. And then just kind of, again, wrapping up with our training and development, we launched our Belonging and Inclusion Calendar in the fall of 2024, which we observe different aspects of diversity, equity, inclusion monthly, where we provide a meal and we bring in keynote speakers and have panels so that way we can have more of an in-depth conversation about different tactics. Our average attendance is about 18 that attend those, and then we do offer a virtual option too. So those who aren't able to either come here where we host them or sometimes we're at the health department, they can still view those on the intranet afterwards. And then lastly, we've been looking to invest in our young leaders. We noticed that in our workforce demographic report, we are getting younger. And so this past year, with the support of our county administrator, we supported 13 young professionals from the County of Peoria to attend the RISE Summit, which was hosted by the Peoria Area Chamber of Commerce. Those 13 professionals represented 5 different departments within our organization. In progress or not yet completed based off of our work plan currently is still looking to develop diversity, equity, inclusion standards for our organization. Pillar 3, minority and women-owned business procurement. In 2023 and 2024, in collaboration with our finance department, we were able to establish a baseline of minority, women, veteran, and disadvantaged-owned vendors in our county database. That was a manual process. We had to snail mail all vendors in our database and have them send back their W-9 and mark that designation. When we did that, we were able to create a baseline that 10% of our current vendors in our database have one of those equity designations. And now one thing that we're working on right now, and I appreciate our assistant CFO, Julie, for discovering this, is we are actually now able to generate reports using Power BI, which is an internal application that we have access to. So currently I'm working on right now of getting more knowledge about being able to pull those reports. So then that way for our 2026 work plan, we could pull those real-time reports to see how we are doing with those procurement opportunities with those different equity designated vendors. When it comes to our workforce participation compliance, so my department has been previously involved in the Health and Human Services building construction. So it was myself and Gabe Jaja in Human Capital Development, and we were meeting with River City and the different subcontractors looking to uphold the participation goals that were for that project, which were 18 and 5%. We came in a little short. We were able to go 13.15% for minority and 3.6% for female participation. But there was a lot of internal efforts that went into there to make sure that we hit that. Per the directive of the county board in 2024, we are now tracking those workforce compliance within my department. And so now I am a part of the Courtyard Plaza project, and I've been working with Core Construction and the subcontractors, as well as our assistant county administrator, Kyle Smith, to ensure that, or we do our best case effort to achieve the 12% minority and 3% female participation per the community workforce agreement that you all codified this past summer. Currently, we are doing well. We had a really good period in August, and we had a really good period in September. So I feel that we will be able to achieve those goals. And so I appreciate the opportunity for our department to bring that in-house, and we were able to save some funds there. One thing that's still in progress or not yet completed, again, per our plan there, is we have not amended Chapter 6.6 or Chapter 6.5 of the purchasing ordinance to incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. Pillar 4, external stakeholder engagement. We partner with a lot of external community members, again, just demonstrating our commitment to supporting them through various initiatives. And so there's a list of different organizations that we support monetarily through sponsorships or volunteerism. And so those are listed in your packet as well. But one of the things that really attracted me to this position was when I was looking at the job description, when it talked about the opportunity to work on special projects or initiatives in research. And so I just want to highlight a few of those. The first one, which is attachment 6, which is the digital equity pilot. We launched that in spring of 2020 or fall of 2024. I'm pleased to say that we have 42 participants that are enrolled in that pilot program that are receiving subsidized internet through that grant that we received through the state of Illinois. And they are very appreciative of their service. Brittany recently did a survey of those respondents. We had a good response rate. 30 of 42 did participate, and they gave us some good data of what they've been using the services for. The biggest one was for education and academic purposes. The second was entertainment, and then the third was health related, so using it for telehealth purposes. The biggest thing was it was helping them navigate through some different financial means in order to maintain it. And currently, we have communicated with them that the pilot will run through June 30th, 2026, unless we get a rollover into FY 2027. And the two other initiatives that we did participate in was the Social Determinants Health Accelerator Plan, which I presented to this board about a year or so ago, as well as also the Start a Business Grant Survey, which this board received those survey results from those who participated in those small business grants that you all provided. And then I did also provide a recap in there about just some of the regional and state leadership things that we've been able to be a part of, including the Community Health Needs Assessment, the Peoria Transportation Equity Study, as well as the Illinois Office of Broadband. We've presented on our digital equity pilot to that group. So in conclusion, I feel that we have definitely made our steps count these last several years. Coming into this position, it was a blank canvas, but it's very exciting because you can be your professional Picasso. And I believe that we've done a good job of being intentional about the things we get involved in. And we look forward to growing and getting involved and continue to keep moving this work forward. So at this time, Mr. Chairman, I'll take any questions that this body may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Member Blair.
How many employees do we have roughly who are here on a visa?
I don't have that exact number, but I'll provide context. We had 2 that were not able to recertify. And there are some nuances that I've learned of why we couldn't necessarily do that. And so I think we'll have to, in conversation with County Administrator Sorrell and our Human Resources Department, of how do we educate and engage our departments on that process. When we got the survey results, they were very strong on not knowing all the nuances that went into that. And so I think we want to make sure that we educate and engage our employees on what that process is.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Board.
Next, are we So we are going to stay here and ask everybody to step out for a second, but I will need a motion to go into executive session per pending litigation. Member Blair, Member Ruland. Please vote. We can do 5.1 and 5.2, and then I need to drop down to committee actions and do the budget items then before we go back up to anything else. So seeing that we're back out of executive session, is there a motion for civil litigation settlement? Member Ricker, Member Allison. Any questions or comments in regards to that? Seeing none, please cast your vote. Motion carries all ayes. Next, that would bring us to 5.2, budget appropriation for risk management fund. There a motion to put this on the floor? Member Ricker, Member Blair. Angela, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Yes, this is a joint resolution with county operations. So we are asking for a budget appropriation for $725,000 to be appropriated from the risk management reserves into our claims liability line item due to a large civil litigated settlement that you all approved back in April, and then some additional pending liability, obviously one that you had just approved in this previous item. And then we still have a couple more months of potential liability expenses that would need to be covered as well. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, please cast your vote. Ayes have it, all ayes. So now that we're at stop for 5.3, we'll go down to 6. This is a motion to accept all the budgets from basically 6.1 through 6.14. Is there a motion? Motion by Member Williams, second by Member Duncan. The floor is yours, Heather.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to cover both the finance committee and executive committee and all of the overall budget in this presentation here. So hopefully there's not too much repetitiveness in here. Okay, the fiscal 26 recommended budget. Overall, the general fund revenues are recommended at $64.2 million, of which $1.2 million of that is a planned spend down of fund balance reserves, and $64.2 million in the expenditures for the general fund. All funds $172.5 million, with $18 million of planned spend down of the fund balance reserves, and $172.5 million in expenditures. This is a graphic that we do every year. It's the recommended tax levy by fund. You can see the various funds in there. It's also in your transmittal, I think page 9. The EAV is estimated to increase at 6.75% for tax year 2025, payable 2026. That means the taxpayers will see an overall increase in their property tax bills. The recommended levy is $36,164,881 at a rate of 82.41 cents per $100 of equalized assessed value. This shows the history of the EAV over time. and is also adjusted for inflation. For departments reporting up to the Finance, Audit, and Legislative Affairs Committee and funds reporting to this committee, revenues are budgeted at $6,555,254 and expenditures at $6,306,838. The revenues are 4.2% of the overall county's budget, and expenses are 3.66% of the overall budget. For the executive committee and the departments and funds that report up to this committee, the revenues are budgeted at $42,403,262 and expenditures at $12,865,102. This makes up 27.49% of the overall budget's revenues and 7.46% of the expenses. As noted in the Public Safety and Justice Committee, we are proposing a new way to fund vacancies in personnel lines for all departments that report up or are covered in the general fund. Instead of budgeting for them in the individual departments' budget line items, vacancies at the time of budget were put into a new account in the general county budget. So that is reflected here. It's just over $2 million. So that's why the expenditures in this committee report have gone up from last year. And as these positions are filled in fiscal 26, a prorated amount of the salary and health insurance, if relevant, will be transferred to the departmental line item to their budgets. If we remove the $1.9 million in expenditures out of the budget and had it how we've done it in the past, it would reduce the expenditures to $10.9 million, or only 6.3% of the county's overall budgeted expenses. This shows the change in revenues and expenses over time. And the different categories that make up these revenues and expenditures. This is for the Finance, Audit, and Legislative Affairs Committee. And this slide shows the same, but for the Executive Committee. You'll note a large spike in fiscal 24, and that's from ARPA projects. Total sources for the Finance, Audit, and Legislative Affairs Committee are increasing slightly at $114,000 or 1.8% in fiscal 26. And expenses are also increasing slightly by $60,000 or 1% in fiscal 26. Staffing levels in this Finance, Audit, and Legislative Affairs Committee will remain flat at 7.85 FTE. And this is a slide of the personnel, and the $68,000 increase is $33,000 in wages and $35,000 in health insurance due to a vacant position that's being budgeted, or a new position that is budgeted in this with the full health insurance. For overall sources for the Executive Committee, that is seeing a decrease of about $179,000 or 0.4%. And also an overall use of funds decreased by $16.37 million or 56%. And this again is mainly due to ARPA funds that were budgeted previously, but not in fiscal 26. Staffing levels increased by 1.83 FTE, and this is due to an additional FTE as well as some reallocation of staff from PCAPs down to county admin. Again, this shows the personnel, the change in personnel expenditures. Just another graphic of the increase due to the 1.9 in vacancy wages. There's one other position that is included in this, and that is in the Ways and Means Committee, and that's for 95,000 vacancy in wages and health insurance. But obviously, the bulk of that new account is in Public Safety and Justice Committee. Just to recap, we've had some amendments proposed and voted on in prior committees. In the Infrastructure Committee, there was an amendment that passed to shift $250,000 for the Hannah City Work Camp project to the Highway and ETSB Office Improvements project within the Capital Projects Fund. That brings that project totaled from $800,000 to $1,050,000. Another amendment that was passed both in infrastructure and in county health was to increase $500,000 to Hannah City Work Camp project from the Solid Waste Management Fund, as that is an eligible expense for that to be covered from. And there's plenty of fund reserve balance available in that fund. And then finally, out of infrastructure, an increase of $1.2 million for civil defense road project funding, $600,000 to come from the ARPA fund. That would be paid for by the interest accumulated over time, and then $350,000 from the county highway fund and $250,000 from the matching tax fund, and that would be reimbursed with the agreement of the $600,000 reimbursement. Again, this is just a repeat of the one that was passed in infrastructure. Okay, these show the budget by committee, which I touched on a bit. Just shows the different revenues that make up the entire budget and also the expenditures. And then this is broken out by just the general fund portion only. The next slide shows our balancing for the future, we call it in the budget book. This was a practice started well before my time here, just to make sure that the county board and administration and staff are looking long-term for the county's financial health and future. This year we used a projection of an average of the last 3 years, and that is a 1.75 increase in revenues and a 1.75 increase in expenditures. And so you'll see, based off that 3-year average number, the reserve requirement will be is projected to be meet the 24% policy in 2035. The blue dot is, that I believe was the comfort level of the board above that 24% at the 30%. And then the dark blue is the reserves remaining. Correct.
Heather, before you go off that page, could you talk a little bit about the fiscal policies that we have in place? Because ever since I've been on this board, we've seen a graph that you're falling off a cliff in 7 or 8 years, but we've never came close. And every year, basically, that graph just gets extended one more year out. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure, thank you. So, depending on the type of fund, the board has a set number of reserves that they're comfortable having, and this one is set at 24%. So every year we look at this and we calculate the figures based off of historical data, and I think this is a good internal tool to use. I also do think it's good to share externally too, because we notice that yes, our expenses change year over year, our needs change year over year. Revenues sometimes are out of our control, like PPRT, intergovernmental revenues. But I think this is a good tool to look at so that we make adjustments within our budgets year over year and our expenditures, and it just gives us a good roadmap, and we can recognize if for example, if we decide to, well, a few years ago we used $7.5 million out of the general fund reserves to help pay down on the bonds for Headington Oaks. We can't do that year over year. And this graph shows us that this information provides that, but we can make strategic, I don't want to say investments like that because it wasn't really an investment, but strategic moves like that and uses of our funds to meet other goals that we have at the county, like paying off the Headington Oaks bonds. And it didn't affect, obviously, the fund balance significantly over time, but we can't do that year over year. So I think this just gives us a good picture of what targets to reach for within our budgeting process.
Thank you.
Okay, so the property tax rate, while it remains at 82.41 cents per $100 of EAV, there are several changes within it this year. So I mentioned in another committee that the board had given us direction to take a look at funds that have accumulated reserves to a great extent. And two of those funds are the IMRF fund and the FICA fund. So year over year, as we just discussed, we budget 100% employment and for vacancies. Well, if you have $2 million in vacancies, you're going to have 3.94% of that budgeted in the IMRF fund that isn't spent, and 7.65% of that in the FICA fund that isn't spent. So those have been accumulating year over year over year. So 2 years ago, we adjusted those down to shift them slightly to cover or to shift those into the long-term care services fund to help pay down the bonds faster on that. And this year we've decided to shift those to the general fund to max the general fund out at 25 pennies and to the risk fund, which does not have a cap, but we shifted both IMRF and FICA so that the fund balance reserve is still within policy, a little bit over policy, and we'll spend those significant balances down, yet still meet all of the needs that we have. We still budgeted for 100% employment for this year, and those costs will be covered. So so that's on the tax levy. The property taxes, we expect to collect at a rate of 99% again. The growth in the EAV of the 6.5% equals $2,286,773. And it keeps the tax rate flat. This is an overall picture of the county's budgeted full-time equivalent positions. So with all of the recommended additions and eliminations of positions, we go from 684.3 FTE to 683.54, and overall net decrease of 0.76 FTE. This is a breakout of all of those FTE. I'm not going to read the entire slide, and I'm sorry there's so much on the slide. I wanted to put it on one so you can look at it at your leisure. But those to highlight, I'll point out the some that are new positions and not just like internal transfer from one department to another. So the supervisor of assessments is proposing to add a half-time FTE for a Limestone Township contract, which will be fully paid for by that contract. And if that contract ends, that position will go away. 0.29 FTE, they're converting a temp employee to a permanent part-time employee. The coroner is requesting 1 FTE for a forensic pathologist, which will be covered. The expenses will be covered by both contracts with other county coroner offices, and county funds that were normally spent on this position as a contractor. So currently we're paying a certain amount of money for contractual service from this individual, and it would just convert over to salary. The state's attorney is requesting to add 1 FTE as a second receptionist. Courts is requesting 2 additional FTEs. 1 is a youth opportunity court probation officer, which would be grant funded, and 1 domestic violence probation officer, which would be covered by county funds. They, as of yesterday, they did not believe there would be an eligible AOIC reimbursement available for that position. For the juvenile detention center, it's a net 1.7 FTE, adding 2 for security screening at access points and decreasing by 0.3 of the transport part-time staff. Public defender requesting to add 1 assistant public defender with the anticipation of reducing contracted assistant public defenders. And then the health department decreased 10.26 FTE, and the Veterans Assistance Commission is requesting 1 additional FTE as a second front desk receptionist. For policy initiatives and project investments, we have almost $30 million in proposed in the budget for 78 different capital improvement projects, vehicle and equipment purchases, and road and bridge projects through various funds, highway capital projects, general, and ETSB funds. Part of that is $3.5 million investing in the initial design and engineering phase for the jail master plan improvement project, which has a focus on the kitchen and laundry, mechanical upgrades, and improvements for inmate mental health. Just want to point out the long-term care services fund, because that was something we'd really focused on the last 2 years, and the positive fund balance was attained in fiscal 24. It's now earning interest income and well on track to pay off those bonds in 2032 when they're callable. And then the courthouse storefront doors, a remodel of the Jefferson Street entrance, and the Main Street entrance is set to reopen. I also thought it would be prudent to put in ARPA funding. The completed projects are on this screen, and there have been quite a few. I know the HHS building is not on there yet, even though it is really complete. We just have not paid that final bill yet, so it's on the next slide. But you can see all of the different things that the board has been able to accomplish across the county with the use of these ARPA funds, and the really thoughtful and strategic discussions that you've had to make it a difference on the county with these ARPA funds. And these are the ones that are in progress. Again, including the Health and Human Services building, which is almost complete. And then finally, a list. Sorry, that is really small. There's just so many projects. It's keeps it small font. So these are all of the proposed capital improvement projects for the board to consider in the budget this year. Again, it totals about $30 million, and this includes aggregate of bridge and road projects in there as well. That completes the formal presentation, but I'm happy to help answer any questions I can.
Thank you, Heather. Member Williams.
I have several. So, Heather, is it possible, Scott, to go back to the EAV page? Did you average that out, Heather? When you have the negatives and the positive, what does it end up being?
It's taken me a while to get there. Oh,
there it is.
No, but I could ask my staff to do that real quick.
Okay. I'd like to have that number. So we are, we've lowered the IMRF and we've lowered the FICA. And we've done that how many years now? Is it 2 or
2 years.
2 years? How many more years can we do that?
This would be the last year, I think,
Okay.
because we're spending it down so far this year.
Okay. So what happens next year?
Then we have to shift it probably back from the risk fund.
So we are going to be spending 18.3 million in reserves. Is it possible for you to go through the ones that we are using for operations?
Yes.
I know some of them are projects. For example, ETSB, we have bridges, roads, those sorts of things, but there are some that we are spending down just to run the department, correct?
Yes.
Can you go through those for me, please?
I will, yes. I have a list. Sorry, I don't have it on the screen for you, but so one is in the American Rescue Plan Act, but that's probably going to be done in fiscal 26 because that's when we're technically, unless the board wanted to use interest, but that's to pay for salary and property taxes on that Galena Road Industrial Park land purchase from September 24, I believe. There are several funds that are designated for specific tasks of operations within the county. One is the County Clerk Recording Automation Fund. Another is the Circuit Clerk Automation Fund, Circuit Clerk Document Storage, and Circuit Clerk Operation and Administrations. And so while those are technically operations of the county, those funds are specifically for those tasks. And so we allocate staff's time accordingly. So if somebody works 10% of their job on recording documentation, that's where their funds are allocated. So that would be considered operations, and we're spending down fund balance in those 4 accounts. Same thing with the Probation Services Fund. There's been a very large balance accumulated over time, and there are specific things that can be used for that. So we, again, that's to go to operations for probation services, and that revenues are brought in as well. But because it hasn't been spent down, there's a very large balance that we're going to offset expenses from the general fund this year. Mm-hmm.
So normally we have been transferring roughly $1.5 million to the JDC, correct?
Correct.
This year we're only doing $750,000.
775.
$775. So then next year, if we don't get it under control, it's going to jump back up to 1.5 million. Is that correct?
I would anticipate it increasing beyond 775,000. Correct.
Okay.
With the JDC fund, the past several years, there have been transfers in from the general fund, as you know, and it's been over and above and beyond what the deficit would have been, what the shortfall would have been. So all of those funds have just been accumulating in their fund balance reserve rather than rolling back to the general fund reserve. And so it was to the tune, I think of the last few years, it was to the tune of just over $2 million of a surplus that had. So we took this year as an opportunity to kind of right size that fund balance as well, and it is it is going right down to the reserve policy of the board for that one. But yes, going forward, if expenses remain on the same path, that general fund transfer would need to be increased again. You're fine. Thank you. Yes. And there are a couple others like the Sheriff Drug Forfeiture Fund and the Sheriff Inmate Benefit Fund. Again, accumulated fund balance. You know, sometimes you wonder, and I'm not specifically talking about these two, but of all of these, I think there could have been a more steady charge over the years of these expenses to these, and they've just been charged to the general fund in operations. Not, you know, any right, wrong, or indifferent. But I think now that we're really focusing on what these specific funds are for, we can, going forward, charge an appropriate amount to those funds at year over year to match the revenues that are coming in, and stop accumulating these fund balances while also giving a little relief to the general fund. It's just my thought. The health department, again, operations. I think part of that is to cover costs of operations not anticipated to be reimbursed by grants. It's not a significant amount according to compared to their fund balance. It's about $115,000. Care and Treatment Board, again, they have that plan to spend down. I consider what they do operations because that's all they do is grant out awards. Veterans Assistance Commission, that's also for operations. They're using it for additional increases in wages for staff. We already touched on IMRF and FICA. And then IT services is the last one that is used for operations, and that's due to, again, accumulated fund balance from the transfer from the general fund via the IT user fee for general fund departments has accumulated over the years, and we're taking this opportunity to kind of right size that a bit as well to give a little relief on the general fund.
On your office, you had one position that we had funded for you last year, and that was supposed to re-centralize the accounts payable. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So did you hire anyone for that position?
Yes.
And do you feel like that's going to take work off some of the departments?
That is the goal. That is the intention. We have a really strong new staff member that started about 6 weeks ago, I think. 5 weeks ago, and has really hit the ground running and is already taking on more departments work. So I'm excited to see what the next maybe 3 months over the next quarter will bring for that. But yes, I think that was the intention of the project. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Williams. Other questions for Heather? No more questions for Heather? All right. Seeing none, please cast your vote.
I think Julie has the average now.
Oh.
She calculated it too. She just is seeking clarification on what you were looking for. So is it just the average over the period? The rate setting EIB. Thank you.
Okay. Please cast your vote. Ayes have it with 1 no. Member Ricker. That brings us back to 5.3, a resolution to adjust fees for services in fiscal year 26. Is there a motion to put that on the floor? Member Phelan, Member Coates. Heather?
Okay. So this resolution is to adjust fees for services for fiscal 26. I believe you'll all recall that the board had approved us going to Bellwether Advantage to do a fee study. I'm sorry, I got distracted. For the fee study, and there were 5 departments across the county included in this: the sheriff's office, coroner's office, county clerk, Peoria City County Health Department, and the Peoria County Animal Protection Services. The fee study was completed, and the recommendation came back with all of the fees, with the exception of 2, being recommended as an increase. This is due to the length of time it has been since we've done a fee study increase. It's been about since 2014 for some of these that have been increased a lot. Most of them are pre-COVID. And so a county is able to charge the cost for the services, nothing more than the cost. We don't want to profit off of it, but we do want to break even on these services that are additional services than what we normally offer to the masses, like a road or at the health department. So the totals that were included, we did include these estimates in the budget for this year. I should say that there's only 2 fees at the health department that are included in this, as they are going to work with their board on internal recommendations and go through that process, and they'll bring theirs separately later. But the other 4 departments are included in this budget. It's looking to be approximately $490,000 increase in revenue across all departments, and that, again, that's because a lot of these were have been undercharged for quite some time. There is a fee schedule at the back of your packet, I believe, or right after the resolution, I think, that shows you what the fees are increasing from and to. And then we included all of the reports for all of the departments from Bellwether in the report as well, if you want to read those. I'll note on the county clerk's office that there is a 3-year schedule for fees to be phased in. Theirs are different. All the other 4 departments, or the other 3 departments, would begin February 1st or January 1st. The county clerk and the health department would begin February 1st due to timing of posting with the state statute. And some of theirs are phased in over 3 years to give some relief to the individuals given the significant increases. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on that.
Member Phelan.
I had at least one department reach out about these scheduled increases. I know about the cost study and the timeline of that, but could someone speak to how the message was disseminated most recently when conversations started, and if departments were given enough time to sort of process these increases?
I will say that in the sheriff's, coroner's, health department, and those 3, they put the increases in their budget recommendations or their budget requests. I worked directly with Becky Spencer and PCAPS on her request and added that into the recommended budget. And then with the county clerk, there were emails that had gone back and forth early September with information on the fees, and then I don't know if Administrator Sorrell wants to speak to any additional correspondence with any of those.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan, for the question. So, as CFO McCord shared, 3 of the 4 departments integrated their recommended fee increases in their budget requests, and those are revenues that have already been approved through the committee processing are before you now. The clerk, as Heather stated, we started having communications with them in early September. We've had an increased amount and level of communication with the clerk, I would say in the last week and a half, or week even, with multiple email exchanges, multiple meetings, multiple conversations. There is a nuance in that the fees tied to the clerk's office for both the clerk function and the recorder of deeds function are required by statute to be posted a certain amount of time before they're go into effect in the clerk's office. We're hopeful if the clerk hasn't already done that, that she will do that. And I suspect she's in the audience because she would like to address the committee about the fee increases. We feel that we've reached a pretty fair compromise in that that we're implementing, or we're recommending to you that we implement the fee increases over a 3-year period, after which we're going to need to do another fee study because we'll be behind schedule at that point for those fees versus all the other departments that are taking 100% of their fee increase now as opposed to staggering it over a 3-year period.
With the recommendation in front of us, do all fees cover the cost of labor materials also?
Heather, you want to answer that?
Yes. Yes, the methodology that Bellwether uses is to do all direct costs, some indirect costs as well that are directly related to the service being offered, and any materials, equipment, that type of thing. They take that into consideration in their calculation.
Last question. Prior to the recommendation, did they cover all direct and indirect costs?
At the time the fee study was presented before, yes, back in 2014. So at that time, but there have been increases in wages and health insurance expenses and paper and all of that since 2014. So that's why they're so out of date. Unless I'm misunderstanding your question, I'm sorry.
Does the fee structure that's currently in place cover cost?
What is being charged today?
Correct.
No.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? And Heather, you might want to touch on what our policy actually is for updating this and why there was a gap, or Administrator Sorrell.
Yeah, so your financial policies, which are at the last section of the white white pages in the front section of the budget book, call for fees to be, first and foremost, for fees to cover the cost of delivering the service, and the second, that we should actually be evaluating these once every 2 to 3 years. Why they haven't been updated in so long are a combination of things. I think one, I'll say, since 2020, we were more focused on the recovery from COVID and then implementing ARPA, and it just was something that we didn't get to. No other excuse than that. Pre-COVID, so between 2014 and 2019, it's been long enough that I don't remember why we didn't get to it, but we didn't get to it.
But we can make a commitment to do that more frequently going forward in alignment with the policies. Then it won't be such a shock.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Member Rulin.
I'm going to have to backtrack a little bit. I should have asked this question sooner, and it has to do with the allocation of funds for unfilled positions. You mentioned that those were going to be brought back from the individual departments, those funds put into a new account. Does the board have any discretion on those funds transferring back, or can they be released at the request of the department head?
So the funds that are budgeted in this new account in General County General Fund, it's called vacancy, salaries, and health insurance, I believe. Those are only allowed throughout the year to be utilized by the county administrator, the way that the resolution is written. Upon request from the department and confirmation from finance and HR that it is a position that was budgeted for, that position has been filled, the prorated amount of their salary and health insurance will then be transferred from the general county account to the departmental budget. There will not be, it cannot be transferred for any other use or reason unless the board decides.
So the board does have discretion on releasing those funds. Let me explain my question. If we have an unfilled position for an incredible length of time, which we do have some of those that haven't been filled in many years, it seems that the logical assumption is that maybe we don't need that position. So before those funds should be released back to any department, it seems that that should be a board decision, because it's at some point it becomes a new position after we haven't filled it for so long. I just wonder if we have a policy on releasing those funds back to the departments that they came from.
So the funds will not be released back to the department at any point in time unless it is specifically for that one position that is budgeted for. But let's say there are 8 correctional officers budgeted in that account right now. Let's say 6 of them are filled and 2 are never filled. Those other 2, the funding for those remain in the general county general fund through the end of December 31st, 2026. And then at that point, they either roll back into the general fund reserves, not to the department, or the board can decide what to do with that surplus at the end of the fiscal year as you normally do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Member Williams.
Rob and I have talked about this. So I guess my question is, what happens when someone retires? Do we actually look at that position and say, do we need that position? And we just eliminate it through attrition, or do we just automatically post it and they look for somebody else? I mean, I think there should be an evaluation if the position is.
Varies by department. If it's in an office that reports up to the administrator, we do have those types of conversations. If it's in an elected office or an quasi-independent office, I can't speak to if that evaluation is done. And obviously, the resolution that was considered in county operations for the staffing count only authorizes the positions that report up to the administrator. The other offices and departments outside of that, when you approve the appropriation ordinance, you are setting a budgetary amount, not the number of positions in that elected office or that quasi-independent board, agency, or commission.
Member Ronell.
In addition to that comment, there was a chart that I had asked to be created on what our personnel costs are going to look like over the next few years, just based solely on the negotiations or the contracts that we negotiated with the collective bargaining units. I still support and stand behind all of the contracts that we made. They were good contracts for our employees, but I think it's eye-opening to see the impact of those over the next few years. And I think that's something that maybe our department heads and elected officials should also have access to, so they can see that each year, the next 2 years anyway, our personnel costs go up $2 million a year just in salaries for collective bargaining. So I think I still want to be able to offer and be a good employer, but I want to be able to protect the employees that we currently have and be able to offer additional raises and future contracts. So I think if we continue to hire people, it's going to tie our hands of being able to do that. So if we can eliminate positions through attrition, I don't want anybody to lose their job. But if we can secure the employees and take care of the employees that we currently have, I think that should be our priority.
Thank you, Member Renault. Member Allison.
I think it's important, though, to add on to that the importance of providing the services that we have to provide, that we're mandated to provide. and also making sure we're not opening up the county for liability risks. So we have to continue to balance all of those.
Thank you, Member Allison. On the fees, I do have a question, Heather. So all offices, it's been 10 years basically since we've done this. All offices, other offices have increased it to the full amount. When you're looking at some of these, like we're going 16 to 20 instead of 22. How is it decided that we just don't go? Because again, we're going to be spending 2 more years of services behind what it is costing us to do. Why do we not just go to the full amount?
We were attempting to make a compromise, I think, with one department that was concerned about the impact of the fees increasing by the rate that they were. And so we kind of looked at the percentage increases of them and just tried to phase them in. If something else, is recommended to be done and just do the full, that's up to the board to do. If you want to just go rip the Band-Aid off and make the adjustment.
Member Phelan?
Is it right to ask if there's representation from that department and if they could speak to this?
Yeah. Clerk Parker would like to come address the board.
Thank you. I've been in you all's shoes before, so I know you're going by the information that you're given, and that's fine. And also, with me, ripping the Band-Aid off is very difficult. The people that come in our office come because of the service that we provide is something that they need. It's not a luxury item. You don't come in and just say, oh, I just want to get a copy of my birth record or a death record. It's usually something that's required by someone else. For example, everyone in our insurance policy, where whoever needs their birth record has to come and purchase that to turn into their insurance so that they can fulfill whatever those requirements are. I realize that the fees have not been raised for some time now, but we have managed with the budget that you've given us. I think that's important too, to realize that we're allocated an amount, we live within that amount, and we've been doing that for the 5 years that I've been in this role. But on the other hand, I do understand that costs do go up on everything, and you do have to cover those costs. But maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but I look at it as departments rather than overall costs. And I know Scott, does what he needs to do, which has been great, covering and making sure that we're all being taken care of. But again, I'm being selfish and I'm looking at just my department, and I feel that putting that extra burden on people right now, it's hard. It's hard for everybody where they're at. And again, for the services that we render, especially on the vital record side. And so what I was hoping is that we could just put a pause on it until maybe next year so that it gives us more time to really look at all of our fees, because there are some other items in there that could possibly be adjusted that wouldn't affect our constituents so hard, so fast. And it may or may not work out, but at least it would give me time to see that. And if it didn't, then we have to go back to this, then we go back to this. But at least that would give us a time to really digest everything and go by to see if there's other ways to reach those same numbers, but on a different route. So that is why I'm against the fee increase for my department. And I just wanted that to be known. Thank you.
Member Blair.
I had some questions for Becky Spencer from PCAPS. I believe yeah. I'll ask my question as you're getting over there. Mainly it's about the drop-off fee. Are you worried of people with such a significant increase in that? Are people going to start dumping animals?
There is a significant increase in the drop-off fee. Unfortunately, I don't know that there are other options at this point for other animal shelters that are open admission that will accept animals. And so I think we will, I'm hoping we'll get through that. And unfortunately, I hope we'll find our way through that. Yeah.
just my personal experience, and I understand that this is a rock and a hard place kind of thing, but I'm currently fostering a dog that was dumped in Tazewell County because they didn't want to pay the fee. Now, they got fined for dumping the dog because they found out who it was, but it is a kind of a rough thing. But I also understand your open admission, and you have to take whatever shows up, so, right.
I had a similar, since Dr. Miller brought that up, I think there was a daily fee for housing the animal that went from remember, I don't have it in front of me, $0 to $50. Trying to understand how that impacts. So if somebody's animal gets picked up, brought in, 2 or 3 days later, they figure out where it's at. It's $150 in 3 days, I think, to pick up my animal. If I read it right, and I guess I'm looking for some clarity. Is that a distraction at some point of people aren't coming, they can't afford to come pick up their animal because you socked such a fee. So now we're going to be overpopulated because people don't pick up their animals. Maybe I read that wrong, but I just wanted to ask.
So there's two schools of thought on that. One school of thought on that is that if you are a great pet owner and you love your animal, you are not going to let them sit at the shelter very long, and you are going to come and reclaim them very quickly. And you're not going to have to worry about boarding costs. We don't charge boarding in the first 24 hours that your animal's at the shelter. So that's a moot point if you come and get your animal very quickly. The next school of thought on that is that as a best practice, I typically don't hold animals hostage for money. And that we typically will work with people if they don't have a negative history with the agency and with having violations with the organization, and that the board has allowed us the grace to waive those fees in the past, should there be circumstances, and should they fill out the paperwork and qualify for us to waive those fees. So we do have the opportunity to waive those fees should we need to do that, and allow someone the grace to do that. But again, I would want to know why we didn't get to that animal sooner, and why maybe they would be sitting at the animal shelter for several days, where we're accumulating those boarding fees day after day after day.
Other questions? Member Duncan.
Back to Heather, in regards to the fees adjusted, and in regards to the county clerk's office, I see where the fee increase for that particular department, and I'm curious to know what was the response to her request to maybe. Is there any way that we could hold off with that particular department, giving her time to evaluate, or a little bit longer time, or what was the response?
I think that's a decision of the board. Our recommendation is to adjust it to meet the expenses that the county is incurring, as every other department is doing. I understand the county clerk Parker's concerns, but I also feel a financial responsibility to have the services that we're providing cover the expenses that are being incurred by the county. Otherwise, the taxpayers are subsidizing these services.
Thank you.
And I will say, I appreciate Clerk Parker's concerns, but as also sitting around this horseshoe of having the fiscal responsibility, fiduciary responsibilities of the board, I'm concerned we waited that 10 years to even get there, and I'm concerned about the stair step of getting in there, because these are subsidizing the costs, and that will set a precedent on future bellwether studies not to undercharge. The reason we do these studies is to recapture those costs. I think we need to, now that we did have a lull there where we had no finance director, a lot of double duties, COVID in there. But knowing with this board and Scott and Heather in these departments, I feel confident in the every 2-year personally, I would almost be inclined just to go right to the fees where they're at right now and not be subsidizing that. Member Williams?
Just to add to that comment, this is part of our financial policy. Our financial policy says we should be covering our costs. So just to add on what you said, I believe that it should be what the cost is.
Is there discussions or motions out there? Are you making that as an emotion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to take it to the full amount to cover the costs per our financial policy.
Is there a second on that, Member Daley? So we have to vote on the amendment to then get to the full board. Any other conversation? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All ayes, or ayes with 2 nays, Member Allison and Member Rosenbaum. So now that brings us to the resolution as amended. Okay, a nay, so 3 nays. Member Allison, Member Duncan, and Member Rosenbaum. That now brings us to the amendment with the resolution as amended. Please cast your vote, or is there discussion on that? Megan, do you have it up there? There it is. Please cast your vote. Motion carried, all ayes. Next, I'll bring us the fiscal year 26 annual resolution for transfer of funds for year-end transactions. Moved by Member Williams, second by Member Daley. Heather?
Thank you. This is so that the county can continue normal business operations near the end of the fiscal year when budgets get close to their maximum, I guess. Transfers between departments may be necessary to pay bills, and so the county administrator would be delegated authority from the county board, as he has every year, to make these transfers as necessary to continue business. happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Seeing none, please cast your vote. Motion carried, all ayes. Next up, bring us to fiscal year 26 tax abatement, all series. Is there a motion by Member Williams, second by Member Daley? Heather?
Thank you. We have bonds, as you know, and in every year, because we have different revenues that are sufficient to cover the bond payments, principal and interest payments, we need to abate the taxes, the tax levy that would normally be covered, used to cover these principal and interest payments. So for the 2020B bonds, it's $2,043,600. The 2022 bonds, it's $1,588,250. This resolution just has you abate the taxes. So since we have those other revenue sources to cover them.
Questions? Seeing none, please cast your vote. Thank you, Heather. All ayes, motion carried. Next, we're at 2025 tax levy ordinance payable 2026. Member Williams, Member Daley. Heather?
Thank you. The resolution here is to propose a 2025 payable 2026 property tax rate of 0.8241 pennies per $100 EAV. This is based on the county EAV of $4.388 billion, which is an increase of 6.75% from last year. The recommended levy is $36,164,881, which is an increase of $2,286,773 over the total property taxes that were extended last year. There are 13 separate funds that make up the tax levy. 10 have statutory rate ceilings, and 3 are non-debt related funds without rate ceilings, which are the IMRF fund, FICA fund, and risk management fund. Changes this year, as previously mentioned, are the risk management levy, which increased 4.17 cents. The general levy increased 1.75 cents to max out at the 25 pennies, while IMRF decreased 1.87 cents and the FICA levy decreased 4.05. Again, there's no debt service levy that is necessary. If you have any questions on this, please let me know.
Questions for Heather? Seeing none. Member Ricker?
Yeah, I'd like to make an amendment to the levy, and I think I've communicated to all the board members on the proposal. So I'd like to at least put that on the floor.
Second by Member Rosenbaum.
All right, thank you for the opportunity. I don't go through all these details. I appreciate everyone's time, and we're late in the day. But there's 2 amendments that would be made. One here on the paperwork you have in front of you that's got the board logo on it. Essentially, Amendment 1 would to amend the tax levy, which is what we're on now, and Amendment 2 would be to amend the annual appropriation and budget ordinance, which is the next item on the agenda. And I guess at a high level, I look at it as county board members, we are elected to represent the county and what we do and the services we provide, but we also are balancing that with the cost of the services and the taxes that we charge our residents. And the residents really don't have a choice once we set the tax levy. It is what it is. They have a choice either to move out of Peoria County or be unhoused, but otherwise they will be burdened with the tax levy. So a small proposal, you may say this is a token proposal, reducing the tax levy by 1.14 million. And you can see in the first amendment on that page, the general areas that we're looking to reduce. So the first one's the general fund levy. In the general fund, there were, and I had communicated on some other documents, but essentially the first part of it was to reduce $550,000 or $500,000 from the capital project for PCAPS for the entry. There was $1 million project. And we learned yesterday in infrastructure that there's a donor and a state fund coming in to, I think, tally up to $550,000 that was not considered in the budget. So we already have a line of sight for $550,000 additional funding to offset the $1 million proposal for PCAPS. So that's where the first $500,000 comes from. We had another adjustment, and I might have to ask Heather as to my details on the second one. The second one was
for the
general.
Yes, multi-area improvements in the throughout the courthouse and facilities, we've been doing carpet replacement, flooring replacement, and painting. And there was $250,000 in that line item for that.
Yeah, and that's a general line item that we have. It's, I think, currently that budget or that reserves sits at over $900,000 today.
There's a second line item for similar type, repair items that is in there in addition to that for the $992,000 in the capital projects fund. But
Okay.
yes, that could.
Okay, thank you. The county health levy, the construction of HHS, due to the good work that was done, we reported back in April that we would have a cost, or we would come in under budget. We all celebrated to the tune of somewhere around $700,000. Heather commented a little bit ago that there's still one outstanding bill, but we have a line of sight for funds to be rolled back into accounts that we saved on the construction of that. Two accounts, one is the health department would roll back $125,000 as an estimate back into the reserves that was budgeted in 2025 to be paid. So that's money that will roll back. The second one was part of the general fund, was IT had $120,000 to be rolled back from the HHS. So again, it's not new expenditures, it was money that we saved by coming in under budget. So those two rollbacks they're not lowering the expense line for either one of those items. What they're doing is taking that, instead of putting it back into reserves, it would be using that to reduce the levy. The last one is the Veterans Assistance Commission. I spoke with Michael Brooks on that. They have 86% reserved right now in their budget. And so he's not opposed, but, depending on our outcome, he would have to take it to his commission board to approve lowering the levy by $150,000. And I also spoke with Monica in the health department one. So I've reached out to each one of these offices that were being impacted. And Scott and I have talked about the general fund ones along with Heather. So the point is, we continue to increase the taxes on our residents. If you look at the second sheet, there's a few lines in there. Our budget keeps going up. Our reserve balances have continued to grow. In the reserve balance, we grew from $65 million in 2022 to $122 million reserve, which you would say, well, that's great, we need reserve. But at the same time, we need to balance this with our taxpayers. We're asking our taxpayers to basically fill our bank account out of their checks to us with property taxes. So the proposal, instead of, in the little data chart, instead of the 6.75%, The proposal would be to reduce the increase down to 3.37%. And today, the rate of inflation for the last 12 months has been 3.0. So it's still more than inflation. We're still asking these people to pay us more. And then you want to know how it impacts the owner. The owner of a $200,000 home, the 4-year tax increase, if we approve this, will increase their tax by $135 a year. So on a home that would have been taxed in 2022 at $365 a year by us, now it's $500 a year. So it's real money that we've been raising our property tax. So again, this is significant, but I think it's a signal that we're listening, because a lot of residents have been voicing their concern that, you know, the EAV is going up, but the only way I can get my money out of the EAV is to sell my property and leave the county and not reinvest. Or if I'm a renter, I'm renting, I'm still paying that through my rental rate going up, because the property owner is getting taxed and they're going to pass that through. So the taxpayer really doesn't have a choice once we approve this. So my ask would be to show them that we at least are listening to the taxpayer and trying to give them a little bit of a break. We didn't take it to zero. I thought about asking to take it down to zero increase. I was trying to be conservative and try to send a good message to the taxpayer that we are listening as a board. So with that, I'll stop and take any questions you may have.
Comments from the member Daly.
I just want to thank you for bringing this amendment forward. I think it's taken me a long time to think about this, but as I listen to all the aspects of the budget, and that actually, I think Member Williams and I asked people not to increase the FTEs, not to increase their budget and their expenditures. Except for a couple of departments, I see very little of that happening. And I feel like, as we're very acutely concerned about people paying, let's say, $6 more for some certificate that we will be giving out, nobody seems to see that everybody who's on a fixed income and people who are struggling but have a home are really impacted by this. This is not pennies.
Mm-hmm.
So I plan to support this, even though I did not come here with that idea necessarily, because I don't think it's respectful of our taxpayers what we're doing here.
Okay, thank you for the comments.
Other comments? Member Williams?
I understand where you're coming from, Steve, but after all the conversations that have happened today, I'm really surprised that you brought this forward, especially when we're looking at collective bargaining agreements that are going to cost us about $2 million more each year. If you lower this, I'll never be in support of ever raising it back again. So it's $1.1 million this year. It'll be $1.3 million next year. And that goes a long way when you're talking about giving your employees good raises. That also goes a long way when we're talking about trying to fund a jail over the next 5 or 6 years. So I understand where you're coming from, but I will not be in support of this.
Thank you, Member Williams. Member Blair.
That's my concern, is this over time, because I don't see us ever being able to raise it again, at least not anytime soon. And what are the cuts that are going to happen next year when we have all these personnel expenses that are going up because inflation is going up? And this is represents that. So I will not be supporting it.
Okay. Thank you, Member Blair. Member Ruin.
I would also applaud Member Ricker for the intent, but unfortunately it just does too little when we're dealing with a budget that has not addressed our biggest priority. And I think I'm going to be hard pressed to believe that the jail is not our biggest priority. I've been through that building. The condition it's in is to say the least, difficult and expensive. And this budget only addresses engineering and design work to get that process started. We're not even really doing any physical capital improvements out there. So if that's the number one priority, I have to set this aside in the hopes that we come up with something bigger. So I'm not going to be able to support it.
Thank you, Member Ruin. Other comments? Member Renault.
I agree with Member Ruland. I thought that you had mentioned when I spoke to Member Ricker yesterday that it was only going to be a $17 a year savings for, so which is $1.43 a month for somebody who owns a $200,000 home. And as a resident, that's not going to make a difference in my life, $1.43. But as a county, $1.4 million. If we would put that into a fund like we do for the long-term care, but make it a jail fund and compound that over the next 10 years, you've got $12 million sitting in a fund that we can use, and we don't have to pass as heavy of a burden onto the taxpayers in 12 years when we have to build a jail. So to me, long-term strategy outweighs short-term optics.
Thank you, Member Renault. Member Allison.
First of all, I love a lot of the ideas I've heard today, and I hope we can all remain equally as engaged throughout the year regarding the budget. One thing, when Ricker had reached out to me, we discussed the concept of the reserves, and that's something that there may be interest in putting together a work group to look at, just so as a board we understand our different reserves, our different funds, and why they're being held, what the long-term plan is. It might be better for us as a board to get a better sense of why that money is there and what we're looking to use it for. That being said, it's kind of hard to grasp hearing that, you know, we're going off the deep end from one board member and another board member saying we're financially set. Obviously, I'm summarizing, but I think it's better to continue with what we're doing to make sure and I commend you as a chairman, making sure projects are getting done that have maybe not been done in the past. So, but making sure we're advancing ourselves and our county to make life essentially better for our community. So thank you to those, you know, who have been involved in this process. It's obviously a big undertaking, but I urge everyone to continue that involvement and keep looking to our future, not just the immediate benefit.
Thank you, Member Allison. Much appreciated. Other comments? I will just add basically the similar conversations me and Member Ricker have. We're going to agree to disagree over what is financially prudent at this point. Historically, right or wrong, this board has remained steadfast in the 82.4 pennies. The only time that has increased has been on a voter referendum to increase it. And there's been other voter referendums where it was voted to increase and we did not even increase it. We ate that penny. As you see on those graphs on there, multiple years, I believe 6 of the years on there were negatives. We never adjusted that pennies. I find this to be a dangerous game of adjusting the pennies, and we've agreed, talked about it, of once it would go down to 79 pennies, the historical practices of this board, we're not playing the games back and forth of adjusting pennies. And as chairman of operations, you've overseen some of the largest contracts, rightfully so. And there is concern around this board of how we can afford those contracts. And right in the front white pages, there's the talks of the concern of the economy coming and everything, and where we're at and how we pay for that. I think this board has dedicated numerous time and will continue to dedicate time into finding solutions that don't burden our taxpayers with a tax increase to pay for a jail when we've seen $30 million to $100 million options. Lowering this does not address that it just makes it even more dangerous across the organization wide, in my opinion, and I've expressed those concerns to you. So I will adamantly not be supporting this and taking the long-standing practice of guarding the 82.4 pennies in good years and in bad years And I think you've heard on the average that it was 4% basically is what it's averaged over those last 10 years. And this is over $15 when we're only about 10%, I believe. Accurate, Heather or Scott, 10% of the actual property tax bill.
That's a pretty good average, depending on whether or not you're inside a municipality or unincorporated. It's close to that.
So I do appreciate, as we get here on the levy, all the hard work. Thanks to Member Allison's comments, all the hard work across from the staff, elected officials, and everybody that came together to make this budget. I know a lot of people put a lot of time and effort and deep dove into this. Talked to Member Williams numerous times over the concerns of this budget. Is it a perfect budget? I don't think anything you can ever say perfect, but it's a good budget to move us forward on it. So Heather and Scott, to their teams, thank you for doing that. So is there any more comments on the levy? So this is the amendment. Please cast your votes. Four members, aye. Member Daley, Member Ricker, Member Rosenbaum, Member Rulin. Rest of the membership, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 10 nays. Now that would be onto the amendment as amendment, or not as, back to the original. The amendment failed. So only 3 ayes, Member Daley, Member Ricker, and Member Rosenbaum. Oh, Member Salzer, were you and I? On the amendment to lower the levy? So Member Salzer has a nay as well. So only Member Daley, Member Ricker, and Member Rosenbaum. All right, now please cast your vote on the as presented. Please vote. Oop. Are the 3 on the bottom all ayes, Megan? So motion passed, all ayes, Member Ricker and nay. That brings us to lastly, fiscal year 26 annual appropriation and budget ordinance. Is there a motion to put this on the floor? Member Williams, Member Daley.
Okay, this is for the fiscal 26 annual appropriation and budget ordinance. Your rules of order require this committee and the Finance, Audit, and Legislative Affairs Committee and the Executive Committee to meet jointly and consider this annual appropriation and budget ordinance. As you know, you may endorse, amend, or reject any amendment to a departmental budget approved by any of the other standing committees on the county board. You will also submit the annual appropriation budget ordinance to the full county board. In your packet, Exhibit A itemizes at the fund level the starting balance, revenues, expenditures, ending balance, and change in fund balance dollars and percent for fiscal 26 as was recommended by the county administrator. The recommended ordinance appropriates a total budget across all funds of $172,542,415. Ordinance recommends $154,251,563 in sources or revenues and a planned use of $18,290,852 of reserves to fund the uses. The beginning balance on January 1st, 2026 is anticipated to be $139,933,814. Property tax revenues are anticipated to be $36,164,881, with the overall rate being 82.41 cents per $100 assessed valuation. This is the longtime policy of the board to keep the rate flat. Property values are anticipated to increase by 6.75% countywide, and non-property tax income is estimated at $118,086,682. Projected fund balance at the end of 2026 is projected at $121,642,962. Again, just to reiterate, to address the funding of vacant positions, we created a new line item in the general county general fund budget, totaling $2,008,850 in wage and benefit costs. These are shown in Exhibit B. These are the only positions that will be eligible to be funded through this. If there's any other position, it has to go through, it either has to already be in the budget or come before the board. There won't be any additions to those positions specified there. If some have been appropriated in fiscal 25, they will be transferred on January 1st, 2026, the prorated amount of the budget into the departmental budget. The ordinance also forbids the county administrator from using the appropriation authority in the general county departmental budget for anything other than this purpose. Our recommendation is to approve the resolution.
Thank you, Heather. Questions? Member Phelan.
During public safety and justice, while discussing the vacant position fund, it was discussed that at the end of the year, if funds remained in that count and positions were not filled, it would go back to the general fund. I would like to propose an amendment. The example I would use is there's a little over $1 million coming from the sheriff's department into that vacant position fund. Sheriff Watkins has been pretty instrumental at using those funds responsibly for the betterment of the jail. And my proposed amendment would ensure that Public Safety and Justice Committee or the sheriff could spend those funds on a responsible project if he brought it to committee, and following committee it would go back to the full board. So I would like to amend the budget ordinance language starting at, be it further ordered and ordained that any funds remaining in the general county department budget at the end of fiscal year 2026 due to vacant positions be appropriated in Q1 2027 by the committee that oversees the department to which the vacant positions are allocated as it sees fit, to then be approved by the full county board.
Is there a second to that? Member Allison? Discussion? Member Allison.
This was a follow-up to a question that Member Phelan asked during public safety, with the concept that, like he mentioned, the sheriff has done so much work to work with us and also keep advancing the sheriff's department, that this is something we should discuss as a committee in case there are goals the committee would like to accomplish with this these funds that were set aside.
Member Ricker.
I guess I want to make sure, is this amendment just for the sheriff's department to be allowed to do this, or all of the departments that have open positions within this list? Because I'm not looking to pick and choose why I give the sheriff authority to come back to a committee and ask for funds and the other departments not. So it's got to be an all or nothing to me.
This is to amend all of them. I specifically chose the sheriff as an example because that is most relatable for this conversation.
Member Williams.
So you're saying they can come back to the county board and ask for those funds?
They would come back to the committee that oversees the budget,
Okay.
most being public safety and justice.
Member Renault.
So would this be part of the budget for the next year then? Or something separate than from their budget?
The way that it's written, and Jenny can correct me if I'm wrong, it would be an amendment to the following year's budget to be expended in the first quarter.
Member Allison.
There's also the concept of not doing so. The concept still remains of returning that to the general fund. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Member Phelan was looking at certain circumstances. If it's related to public safety, he wanted that to come back to the Public Safety Committee, or for the remaining, whatever committee they report to, if there's a certain project they're looking to accomplish with those. But the concept still remains that they could go back to the general fund as well. And you can correct me if that wasn't what you were thinking.
Member Blair.
I saw Ms. Boswell's finger on her microphone. I don't know if she wants to add anything to this.
No, the thought is that they're creating this new fund called the General County Departmental Budget line item. Is that right, Heather?
It's not a separate fund. It's a very specific line item within the general county's budget. So my only concern is on the wording that it says remaining in the general county departmental budget.
Mm-hmm.
That is not actually
that doesn't exist.
A thing. Yeah.
Okay. So so what's
so I can look up the specific line item that it's called.
So the thought would be that if whatever vacancies remain at the end of the year, that money that remains in the line item she's going to correct us on the wording of would be swept back to the general fund. But what Member Phelan with the amendment is attempting to do is it's swept into the general fund. But if a department head who had those vacancies in there, it's their vacancy, but it's existing in this line item, if they came and requested to their committee to use those funds, that committee could decide to allocate those funds out. And of course, it would be approved by the full board, but so that it wasn't swept into the general fund in a kind of blanket way where, then you forget about that money, but that department could capture it by going back through their committee, if that makes sense.
I guess I'm cautious about adding wording because the way I understand it is that at the end of the year, any funds remaining are owned by the general fund. There's nothing that restricts let's say the sheriff's department to come in January the way it's written and say, I understand I had 3 positions I didn't fill. I would like permission to have money allocated out of that. So I don't know if we have to change the wording. I think the process is into place today, right? The sheriff could come in January and say, to the Public Safety and Justice Committee. I have this project, this need, or any of the other ones on here. So I guess I want to be cautious. Isn't that available today, the way it's written, that they could come back to their committee and ask for allocation of money, or the way it's written?
Yes, that is correct.
We don't need to change the wording to make that allowable today. Just wanted to make sure I don't complicate the wording.
Member Phelan?
I think that's true, but what I want to point out is we have already given these department heads the flexibility to use that money because it's been allocated. That's the way we've always historically done it since I've been on the board. What we're doing, if we do not change the language, is taking that ability away from them. And forcing them to come back before the board. This money is money that we're already budgeting to that department to spend. I think you are putting handcuffs on department heads and electeds, forcing them to take another step in the process and come back before the board.
Member Allison?
The concern too is we don't want to put the electeds or the department heads in a position to where they hurry up and hire someone because they're afraid they're going to lose that FTE. And so they hire just anyone. We want them to have the confidence to know that the committee is here for them to make the case, that money is not just gone and never to be seen again.
Other discussions? Member Renault?
I guess I'm a little bit confused. Does that counter the purpose of that line item anyway? Like, why don't you just give it to them to begin with, like our current practice is, if they're entitled to that money? If you feel they're entitled to that money anyway, going through an extra step, why not just continue our current practice?
I would ask you the question of if you think electeds should give raises outside of collective bargaining units. That happened because we gave someone the flexibility to do it. This puts the control back with the board.
Other comments? Member Blair?
Is there a way to, I know that we're allowed to make amendments to X amount of day before it goes to the county board. Is there a way to table this or something so we can get our heads around it? Maybe it's just me that needs some more time.
We do. Member Sorrell? Or Administrator Sorrell?
I mean, I'm not against it. I think I just need to think about it more, right? I'm not saying I'm against it. I think I want to make sure that the wording is correct and that we've worked out precisely what would happen. Is it just my level of discomfort? I don't know if other people have that discomfort.
I was going to mention this under miscellaneous, but your deadline for any floor amendment is 5 p.m. on Monday, November 10th. It needs to be in writing to Vice Chairwoman Williams in her role as the chair of the Finance Committee, and or myself. So that's the deadline.
So is there a procedure to table that, or do we have to vote it down so it can get floor amended? I don't know the rules.
He would have to withdraw his motion if that was. Yeah. And
Yeah, he can, Member Phelan can withdraw it, or you can vote it down and a new amendment proposed. I can look up if there's another way to table this.
And maybe it's just me. I don't know.
Oh, take the vote.
Member Ruin?
I would support this because it brings it back to the board for the responsibility of, and the department head to make the case of why they want to spend it other than what it was originally intended for. My only concern would be that it have a shelf life. If you don't spend it in the budget calendar year, you can spend it the next year after you come back to the committee. But after 2 years, or 3, we can't let it stockpile. We've got to go back to the general fund because there's some of these positions that haven't been haven't been filled in many years. And we're talking about a lot of money if there's no limit to it. So I would easily support Member Phelan's motion or amendment if we could put some time limit on it.
Member Coates?
Well, I guess part of my question is, are we discussing more of a process of how things are done versus amending? Because I feel like we're talking about a process versus making an amendment.
And I mean, yeah. Other comments?
Can I?
Heather?
Sorry, I was just going to speak to the current policy of the board. So at the end of the fiscal year, if there's a surplus in the general fund, the board has until we close our books at the end of March to make a decision on what they want to do with all of the surplus funds. So it's not just these specific funds. It goes back to the board for that. And then at the end of that point, those funds have to be spent for audit purposes by the end of March. So there would be no eligibility to roll those forward any further past March of 2027.
Thank you, Heather. Member Renaud?
Just procedurally, I got to wrap my head around that. I can't support it today. I mean, it seems like it's going to, because it's a budget amendment, it's going to have to go through 2 committees and supermajority on the board. I just have to be able to wrap my head around the whole process.
Thank you, Member Renaud. Member Ricker?
Yeah, I'm probably in the same place because, I mean, I appreciate what you're doing. I think there's some validity to it. We talk about the end of the year, but why couldn't I come, if I was the sheriff, I'd come to you in August saying, I want to take 2 of these correction officers' positions and the money that ties to it. I'd like to have those funds in August of 2026 to do X, my project, my justified project. Couldn't we do it during the year? I guess I throw that out there. I'm not trying to confuse, but I'm just saying that we need to make sure we understand the ins and outs because we don't want to pass something here that isn't what we're really intending to do. So at this point, until I have a better clarity, I just don't want to blindly support something I don't understand.
Member Salzer?
The only thing I've got a problem with it is it's just for one office. And we need to, what? It's all the offices? I must have gone to sleep where somebody was talking. I thought we were just dealing with the sheriff's office, who I strongly support. I think we got a great sheriff, and he's really tried to work with us through the years in regards to the budget and so forth. But I thought, so if you're going to deal with everybody being treated equally, I would support the amendment.
Other comment? Member Rulon?
Member Phelan, if I interpret all this conversation correctly, and our CFO has clarified that the first quarter is the time limit, all we're doing is giving the board oversight on anybody spending budget surplus that was intended for personnel. It seems simple enough to me. The time limit question is okay. I'm 100% in support of this.
Any other questions? So this is for, as amended, for the amendment. Member Blair.
Wait, I didn't say that. I'm so sorry. Tell me if I'm allowed to do that. Or do I need to? Is there extensions for something?
Don't have to state a reason why you're abstaining. Not normally a reason to abstain.
May I change my vote?
Yeah. So the motion, if I'm reading that right, it should be 7-7. That means the motion fails. Microphone, Member Williams.
I voted against it just because I want to understand it better. And probably at the end of this, I would support it, but I just want to make sure I understand it because I'm kind of confused here. So
I agree. I'd welcome Member Phelan to bring it as a floor amendment.
Thank you, everybody. Scott, just one more time, reminding everybody on the board, any floor amendments for the budget need to be
5 p.m. Monday, November 10th, in writing to Vice Chairwoman Williams and/or myself.
Okay, so 6:45. What brings us to discussions? Oh, sorry. Yep, sorry. I'm getting a little ahead of myself with the amendments. Please vote on the original ordinance.
An abstention counts as a no vote, so it really has the same effect either way.
I've had lots of fights at my other job, whether it's abstention or no.
Yeah.
All ayes, and Member Phelan and Member Ricker voting no. That brings us to discussion, standing committees. I'm assuming everybody wants to go over them. Just joking. We will receive and file the standing committee reports. I know quite a few committees had a lot of, I think, Coach, what'd you have, 11 resolutions? So that brings us to public comments. Is there anything under public comments? Miscellaneous, anything under miscellaneous? I'll start over here first. Salzer, Paul, Sharon, Ricker, Renaud, Member Blair.
Just very quickly, I just want to give kudos to the sheriff's office and everyone who has been working on this, on the Grayson trial. We are probably going to be footing a bill for that. So kudos to all the great work that they did.
Thank you, Member Blair. And I did have that conversation with Sangamon County. Member Daly. Phelan, everyone. Quick update, just real quick. Governor Pritzker was in town for Rebuild Illinois today, and they announced the joint city and county Sheridan from Glen to Northmore urban expansion of that project, which is a big deal for, I know, that neighborhood. So kudos to governor and legislators for investing in Illinois, largest investment in any state combined of all the Midwestern states. So big deal, believing in Illinois and believing in Peoria. So without that, seeing that, meeting adjourned.